If you're anything like me, gaming is probably a huge part of your life. Since we were kids, we've been having fun alone or with friends while playing video games. Thanks to that, and to common sense, of course we can all agree that providing entertainment is the main goal of the gaming industry. That's why game devs are making so much money in the last few years. Video games are the most complete form of entertainment experience that there is. Not only because of its graphic quality, amazing art styles, remarkable and iconic soundtracks, or amazing lore and story, but because we, the players, are always the ones actually living the experience. Obviously, it's a virtual experience, but we're the ones playing through all of the obstacles and challenges, facing puzzles and bosses, and contemplating the artistic effort behind building this monumental product, the game. Although some games are, well, less monumental than others, let's be honest. However, at least for me, being entertained is just a part of the deal. I think games can actually provide much more than just a few hours of fun during our free time. In many cases, they can communicate some truth about the human experience in one way or another, showing us how relevant it is to be virtuous and how bad some human vices are. They often have very relatable characters and compelling stories that can not only give us some fun and unforgettable memories, but also genuinely turn us into better people, amplifying the horizon of our consciousness and helping us see things from a different angle. The thing is, I was recently reminded, for better or for worse, of how much all of those dimensions of the gaming experience are real by one game in particular, Death Stranding. You will understand why I say for better or for worse in a second, just stay with me. In 2016, when the game was announced by Hideo Kojima, who I didn't really know much about at the time, I wasn't exactly a Kojima fan, I remember watching the trailer for the game and thinking, okay, what the hell is that? Why am I looking at a naked Daryl on a beach with a baby, then without a baby, a bunch of dead whales, and 5 floating random dudes? It's safe to say I wasn't the only one thinking something like that, by the way. Kojima's new project seemed very unique, but also kinda confusing and weird. I'm not gonna lie. I remember some of my friends truly believing that this game would be absolutely, unquestionably a masterpiece just because it was a game from Hideo Kojima. But the game didn't really spark my interest at the time. It was an exclusive for PlayStation, and I've always been more of a PC gamer. As I said before, I was not a Kojima fan either. At the time I hadn't even played Metal Gear Solid 5 yet, so evidently I was not going to spend my money to play Death Stranding at that point of my life. When the game was released in 2019, I was still not particularly interested in it. There was some controversy surrounding the game that caught my attention though. After they played it, the Hideo Kojima fans thought not only that the game was a masterpiece, but some of them thought that it would be a groundbreaking product for the game industry because of its originality and creative effort to produce something genuinely unique and provide an experience that no player has ever had before. On the other hand, the Hideo Kojima haters thought that, well, the game is garbage because it's basically a post office simulator. You just have to walk around for endless minutes inside a very tedious scenery to deliver a bunch of cargo to random NPCs that sometimes happen to be douchebags. I patiently heard both sides at the time, but I couldn't really have any solid opinions about it since I didn't play the game. Now, let's go for a little time skip from 2019 to 2023. When Death Stranding 2 is announced. When I watched the trailer for DS2, I was absolutely captured by it. I don't even know why exactly. Maybe the design of the characters, the beauty of the cinematic graphics, the serious and dramatic atmosphere, or maybe it was the same mysterious and unique and, a little less weird tone of that first trailer I saw in 2016. I was finally convinced to play Death Stranding and form my own opinion about it. On top of that, I found out that Bring Me the Horizon made a song for the first game and I really liked the band, so that actually made me want to play the game even more. And considering my fresh new interest in the game and the fact that nowadays the game is available for PC, I could just buy it, which I didn't have to do because Epic Games gave it to me for free. So I finally played it. A quick disclaimer here before I talk about the game. Of course, I'm going to, talk about the game. So spoilers are going to be a thing, okay? In case you didn't play the game, you might not want to watch this video before you play it. Just go and play the game and then come here again. Anyway, back to Death Stranding. Diving into the massive and somewhat lonely landscapes of Death Stranding, everything was indeed very unique. From the hyper-realistic physics in the character's movement while walking, running, or carrying the cargo around, to the mysterious lady with weird clothes and a high-tech umbrella, it was for sure much different than any game I've ever played. The cinematic choices Kojima made can be seen during the cutscenes and even in the gameplay itself, when all of a sudden a song will start playing during your walk and the camera angle will change, pulling you right into that fantastically dramatic and apocalyptic atmosphere of the game. During these contemplative moments, there was only one question alone in my mind. Why the hell is Sam Porter Bridges the protagonist of the game? I mean, don't get me wrong, Sam is a great character. He's not just a simple human, since he has dooms and is a repatriate, which means that he can somewhat sense PTs and basically come back from the dead, checking the having special abilities box on the protagonist's checklist. But truth being said, he doesn't really have the hope, the optimism, or even the charisma that most protagonists usually have. He's mostly a pessimist. After being approached by Bridges to be the man responsible for the reconnection of the cities in America, bringing all of the people together again and restoring the unity of the human civilization through the expansion of the Cairo network that would give people hope of a better future for mankind, Sam's answer is very direct and simple. No, I won't help you. America doesn't exist anymore, I don't care, which to be fair would be a very similar response to what I would give, honestly. I am a pretty pessimistic man in general, so that answer made me like Sam even more. I felt related to him. But the thing is, I don't think I should be the protagonist of a story. I should be a background character at best. Why is he the protagonist then? As awkward as it was to see a guy like that as a protagonist, I realized after only a few minutes into the game that the reason why Sam would actually help Bridges and go around the inhospitable territory of apocalyptic America, having to deal with BTs and timefall to deliver some goods to people he doesn't even know and connect all of the cities to form the UCA, was not because he cared about the cause. It was because he had the moral responsibility of helping someone he loved. Emily, who at that point in the game was being held in Ajnat City, which is a city on the other side of the country, needed him to build the Cairo network to reconnect the cities in America. Of course, by the end of the game, we figure out that this whole relationship between Emily and Sam is way more complicated than that, especially because of what Emily actually is, but initially, that's what Sam believes he's doing. He has the burden to connect the country because a woman who was always there for him needed his help, so he had to do it. During the process of helping Emily and building the network, you have to walk. A lot. Remember when I said that this game reminded me of how much gaming is something beyond mere entertainment and can make us better people, for better or for worse? Yeah. That's what I mean by for worse. Let's not pretend here that some of the walks in the game are not ridiculously boring. I almost dropped the game in the first 4 hours of gameplay just because of how annoying it was to just walk around an empty landscape just to deliver some random shit to a stranger. Bruh. However, after the 4-hour mark into the gameplay, not only the cargo delivery process starts to become more bearable thanks to the way the game system works, letting you have the help of other players, printing roads and bridges and using vehicles, but also something much more important than that hit me almost like an epiphany. Kojima was actually a genius. Of course the walks in the delivery process are hard and boring. That's part of the burden that Sam is carrying. It's not something pleasing to do. It's just something that he has to do it. Kojima is letting you know that part of your mission is to accept the fact that sometimes the most important things that you are carrying on your shoulders are not that fun to carry at all, but they are important, so you'll carry them anyway. After I started to understand the difficulty of being a deliverer in that way, the walks and the delivery process in the game as a whole changed for me, became more pleasant, and I started to even feel relaxed while I was on the road to deliver something. Everything becomes more bearable when you realize that there is a purpose and that it's your responsibility to do it. Sam, who doesn't seem at all like a protagonist in the beginning of the game, starts to understand more and more the importance of the connections between the people in America as he makes his deliveries. He starts to understand that thanks to his effort, everyone can work together now, helping him back with gear or data and sharing their knowledge and work with other cities. They can all genuinely build up their hope for the future because they are all connected, and Sam starts to realize that his burden is not just a burden, he's carrying the possibility of a better future with him. That sensation of accomplishment and the positive feedback you receive during the process of creating the network is very rewarding. Sam is doing the right thing. He's helping people in the way he can, and everyone is benefiting from it. It's a great example for us on how to deal with our own responsibilities. There are plenty of other layers on how Sam is a great representation of a responsible man, of course, in the way that he helped Mama in Lochner, for instance, despite the fact that it was a very uncomfortable situation for him to throw himself into, or the fatherly duties he has towards BB-28, who is not even his actual child and beyond that is considered just a piece of hardware by the ones who use it. But there are other characters in this game that in very different ways can be even more outstanding examples of what it means to be responsible. And the best way to understand the true meaning of sacrificial responsibility in this game is by looking at another great character in the story, and certainly one of my favorite female characters in video games, Fragile. Despite the fact that the first thing she does for us in the game is ruining our ride while we are trying to deliver some stuff, Fragile turns into a very important ally during our mission of reconnecting the people of the country. She seems to be a mysterious woman who also has dooms, like Sam, but she's apparently even stronger than him. She's also the owner of Fragile Express, a private delivery company, which is a big deal in this world since delivering things is so difficult because of the Death Stranding. During the first episodes of the game, it's hard to say for sure how trustworthy she is, since we don't really know much about her. However, one of the most interesting pieces of information about her is given to us very early in the game. During the prologue, Sam and Fragile meet inside a cave and she shows us her hand that looks like the hand of a 90-year-old woman and tells us that her entire body was exposed to the timefall. It's hard to understand exactly what that means this early in the game. The only thing I could think about the first time I heard her saying that was, well, so is she old or young? Is her entire body old like that? Why is her face that young then? How did she save her face if her whole body was exposed to this weird ass rain? Well, later on this very peculiar information about her would turn out to be nothing less than the consequence of one of the most impressive and well written pieces of female protagonism I've seen in the history of games, and also one of the most intense scenes in the game. We only find out a little bit more about her past after confronting Higgs, one of the main antagonists of the game, for the first time on our way to Lake Knot City. After beating the massive BT creature Higgs summons to kill us, Fragile and Sam travel to Lake Knot City together. During the trip, Fragile tries to ask for a favor regarding Higgs and calls him an asshole. That indicates that she and Higgs did have their beef in the past, which is a good sign since it means that she's not on the side of the lunatic who just attacked us. After a few more hours of gameplay, we get to the point in which Higgs tries to trick us into transporting a bomb to South Knot City. I actually took a while to realize what I had to do in this part of the game, by the way. The game literally had to tip me into going to Fragile before trying to deliver the freaking bomb, so I kept exploding for a while. But anyway, since we find out about Higgs' plan, you have to get rid of the bomb somehow, and the way to do it is to throw it into a lake. Right after doing that and saving the city, we have the chance to talk to Fragile, and this is when she finally tells us about how her body deteriorated in the rain. Higgs forced her to make a choice between saving herself and her body or saving South Knot City and all of its citizens. She could just use her teleport and go to a beach, simply disappear, and leave the bomb there to explode the city, or sacrifice her body, potentially her life, to try to save the people in the city and throw the bomb into the lake before it goes off. Higgs, in one of his most sadistic moments, gives Fragile only a mask to protect her, quote, pretty face, takes her clothes off, and sends her into the timefall. She doesn't look back, she doesn't die, she actually saves everyone. The reason for her to make that decision at first sight seems to be the fact that she felt responsible for letting Higgs transport the bombs into the cities in the first place. He worked with her, he used the delivery system of Fragile Express to transport the bombs, so she believed she was partially responsible for the tragedy. However, something else led her to the decision of saving the city as well. At that moment, she knew that she didn't really have a choice. The only choice she could take was to save the city, simply because it was the right thing to do. During that same dialogue with Sam, he recognizes that some people believe Fragile to be a terrorist, but some people believe she's a hero, a woman that helped them when no one else would. And Fragile refuses to accept the title of a hero, according to her own words, because she regretted the decision of saving the city and sacrificing her own body since the day she took that decision. This is actually one of my favorite moments in the game game because Sam's response to her when she said that was strikingly profound. He says that it doesn't matter that she feels bad about making that choice. When it came down to it, she did exactly what she had to do and saved the city. The shame Fragile feels because of her regret of doing the right thing is much less real than the lives she effectively saved by making the choice of sacrificing herself and carrying that burden. What makes her a hero is not her subjective feeling about the choice she's made, is the objective fact that she saved those people's lives. I don't see a lot of people listing Fragile as maybe one of the greatest female characters in modern games, but very rarely will we encounter such a well-written, virtuous, and inspiring female character like her. Now, even though both Sam and Fragile are great examples of doing something good through responsible actions and helping other people, there's an observation to be made here. Sometimes, life is not that simple. Sam achieved his goal. He reconnected the people in America, built the Cairo network, and was ultimately able to help Emily in a way that nobody else could. Fragile sacrificed her body to save South Knot City, and she was able to do it. For both of those characters, things worked out fine. Now, don't get me wrong, what they did was extraordinarily difficult, but at the end of the day, they achieved the goal attached to the burden that they decided to carry, right? Imagine Fragile deciding to help those people and save them from the bomb, but in the middle of her run, she faints because of the time fall, the bomb goes off, everyone dies. That wouldn't be such a good outcome, would it? However, sometimes even when you make the decisions you're supposed to make and carry your responsibilities on your back, things don't really work out for you. Sometimes life just sucks, and contingencies that are out of your control can make everything fall apart even if you individually did everything you could do. And there's a character in Death Stranding that I think is a great example of how to deal with this. But before we go into that, consider subscribing to the channel and liking the video. I mean, if you're still listening to this video, you're probably enjoying it anyway, so why not just leave a like and subscribe, right? Anyway, the character I was referring to is actually my favorite character in the whole game, Clifford Unger. Cliff is presented to us throughout the game in multiple different ways. Early on, we can only see him in flashbacks that Sam has. Those flashbacks are caused by the connection between Sam and BB-28, and one thing that is very noticeable about Cliff's character is that he's apparently a good father and husband. Clearly, he's not in a very good situation. Something seems to be wrong with his wife, who seems to be in a hospital bed of some sort, and he's often talking to the BB, who in the flashbacks is his son. For a reasonable amount of time during the gameplay, the flashbacks are all we have on him. That changes when we face one of the strangest events in the game, the supercell that transports us into a World War II warzone beach. Yeah, out of nowhere, instead of delivering some goods and chilling while you walk around the map, now you have to kill a bunch of BT soldiers while Cliff, for the first time formally introduced in the game, is hunting you down and controlling the BT soldiers like a captain of an army. It's the first time in the whole game that we can actually see Cliff as an antagonist in the story. His powers seem threatening, he has a very creepy doll with him, everything around him is either filled with black tar or is red like blood. He's a scary dude at this point of the game, I'm not gonna lie. But even though he looks like a villain, he's creepy like a villain, and he's hunting us, which is exactly what the villain of the story would do, his only real concern is to get his BB back. That's why he's after us. It's hard to find him evil, like Higgs for instance. He's clearly not evil, we just don't know enough about the situation to perfectly understand his motivation to literally drag us into the world of the dead just to hunt us down and get his BB back. Of course, just like everything else in the game, we have to deal with him. We escape the crazy World War beach, and after we do that, Deadman gives us some information about Cliff. He was indeed a war veteran, though he didn't fight in World War II, but in much more recent wars, and he was already deceased. Therefore, he couldn't be the actual father of BB-28. The game continues, and just like all the other challenges in the game, we would have to deal with Cliff again. And again. Before we face Cliff for the third and last time in the game at the Warzone beach, we see him somewhere else, inside Emily's beach. The reason for that is explained in the game, and essentially both Higgs and Cliff were not the actual antagonists of the game. They were both being used by the Extinction entity. As we deal with Cliff for the last time in one of the most action-oriented portions of the game, we're finally able to see Cliff's true nature. Despite the fact that he clearly wanted to take his BB back, he wasn't being consumed by any type of resentment. He was not trying to randomly hunt bridges down and kill all of its members. He just wanted to take care of his son. Cliff's last words to Sam in the Warzone beach are some of the most interesting in the game. He actually lifts Sam up by saying that Sam is building bridges between people and giving them hope. At the end of the dialogue, Cliff hugs Sam and disappears. After this final confrontation against him, we have to deal with, the rest of the game. Up until we finally reach episode 14 called Lou, in which we finally have the complete flashback through Sam's memories of what actually happened with Cliff and his family. That's when we finally realize the massive burden he had to carry. His son was a candidate for early experiments created by the government to implement the BB technology, which means that his wife was a still mother. She was essentially dead. Cliff was a man capable of fighting wars and saving his soldiers over and over again, as Die Hardman says. But he was also a husband that felt incapable of saving his wife, and a father who made a mistake by giving his son to the government. He felt that the entire situation was his fault and decided to deal with it in the only way he knew how, by force. He had to make one of the hardest decisions a man can make. Looking at his wife, he ends her vegetative state, takes his son with him, and tries to escape the government facility he was in. He has to try to save what's left of his family. That is the only mission that matters in his life, and he feels like he's failing. Of course, escaping the building was an impossible task with the few resources he had. He ends up trapped in the room he was trying to leave in the first place. And that's when, witnessing these memories, Sam has an almost transcendental interaction with Cliff for the last time, in which he tells us that Sam is his son. Sam was that BB we saw in the flashbacks all along. Cliff repeats exactly the same words he told us on the Warzone beach on the last time we saw him. And then he is shot by the bridge's security guards. While he was there, lying down on the ground, hugging his son, Cliff says some of the most emotional words in the game. And I quote, "When I found out I was gonna be a father, I was so scared. Scared of what it would mean. I had to be there for you and your mom, no matter what. I couldn't just go off and get myself killed anymore. I couldn't just leave you alone. I couldn't. I had it all wrong. All wrong. Being a father didn't make me scared. It made me brave." And that's when we realized that when he embraced the responsibility of becoming a father, he became brave enough to sacrifice his own life against all odds to try to save his son. In this moment, we can see that Cliff released the BB from the pod he was in. To a degree, that was part of the reason why Sam had the chance to have a life among the living. Emily decided to save him as a baby from death only after Cliff had the courage to release him from his pod in the first place. Cliff's final moments made me genuinely emotional. It was one of the most moving scenes in the game, and it really shows us how difficult it can be to carry the burdens we have in life, and even when we try our best, still be a victim of the circumstances and feel like we failed to fulfill our responsibilities. But even facing that failure, even at the very end of his life, he still acted virtuously and tried to give his son the only chance he could have to maybe live. Truth being said, some of the most difficult moments in life are the ones in which there's nothing we can do. The care we have towards our responsibilities and our loved ones is no guarantee that everything will end properly. But even in those moments, the choice to do the right thing to make things less worse and more bearable will very likely exist. We cannot just be taken by resentment and anger. Those feelings won't help us to, in face of tragedy, reduce the suffering we have to deal with. That's what Clifford Unger's sorrow represents in this game. The good and the virtue in face of the worst possible situation. The willingness of a father to, till his very last breath, make the best possible decision he could think of to save his son, the one person he loved the most. I'm gonna be honest, the amount of truly interesting and substantial discussions that can be had through the analysis of Death Stranding is massive. Interesting debates about the concepts of death, life, the purpose of existence, the validity of authority and hierarchies. All of those things would be interesting to talk about. But the value of carrying the personal responsibilities each of us have in our lives is certainly one of the most evident and positive lessons we can take from the game. Sam, Fragile, and Cliff will always be good references of well-written, compelling, and virtuous characters for me. For sure, Kojima surprised me with one of the most unexpected, unique, and amazing experiences I've had in gaming. And I certainly have high expectations for what Death Stranding 2 will look like. Anyway, feel free to tell me if you guys had any similar epiphanies or experiences while playing Death Stranding in the comments down below. I'm usually pretty curious about other people's experiences and insights. If you heard all of this until now, I really appreciate your attention, and I see you guys in the next one.